Hello Marvel fans, and welcome back to Nerd Doc. It feels like it's been forever since Moon Knight and Multiverse of Madness, but we finally have another Marvel character to talk about, as Ms. Marvel Episode 1 is now available on Disney+. This video breaks down the first episode of Ms. Marvel, the post-credits scene at the end, and the songs in the episode, which means there will be spoilers. If you do not wish to be spoiled, you have been warned. There are chapter timestamps, so you can jump straight to the post-credit scene if you'd like, and if you have any questions about the first episode or the series in general, leave a comment below and we'll try to answer them as best we can. If you're only here looking for the music in the episode, there's a lot, and it's all listed in the description below. We aren't able to play any of the songs here because of YouTube copyright, but you'll find YouTube and Spotify links below for the songs that are available on those platforms. Also of note, the song that plays when Kamala first gets to school is Deal With It by Ahmed, who is the actor that played Carlton Drake and Riot in the first Venom movie, and Bodhi in Star Wars Rogue One. Just a little fun Marvel and Star Wars connection there, even if it was Sony Universe stuff on the Marvel side. Anyway, let's get into the episode. Kamala is making a video for her YouTube channel about the events of Avengers Endgame, culminating in Captain Marvel saving the day. We end up finding out that normal people know about what happened because Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, had a podcast interview where he divulged a lot of details about the final battle, as well as other things about the Avengers. We also get to see how much of a fan Kamala is of Carol Danvers. She even mentions that she doesn't think any other Avenger could have punched Thanos the way Captain Marvel did. Of course, we know that's not actually true since Wanda almost took Thanos out by herself, not to mention Captain America held his own for a bit with the help of Mjolnir, and Thanos eventually knocked Captain Marvel out of the battle. But this little bias toward Captain Marvel is intentional because Kamala Khan's big thing is that she's a huge superhero fan, with Carol Danvers being her favorite hero. As Kamala wraps up her latest YouTube video, with great editing by the way, she mentions Thor secretly being a gamer. This information probably came from Ant-Man as well, and was basically confirmed in Avengers Endgame, with Korg having to call in the big guns when Noob Master 69 showed up. AvengerCon is also mentioned, which is an in-universe convention celebrating all the Marvel heroes. During the Ms. Marvel press conference held last week, Kevin Feige mentioned that there have been discussions about a real-life version of AvengerCon. Some of the props from the in-universe event will be touring the country, but there's a chance we may see a Marvel-created Avengers convention at some point in the future. Maybe it will be part of D23 Expo, or maybe it will be its own thing like Star Wars Celebration, but Feige definitely made it clear that there have been discussions about such an event. Kamala tags her YouTube videos as SlothBaby Productions, which is a nod to the Ms. Marvel comics in which Kamala writes fanfiction under the pen name SlothBaby. Instead of writing fanfiction, the series has opted to update that into making YouTube videos. You even get a little glimpse of Kamala's SlothBaby logo, which is a sloth with wings. We get to meet Kamala's family, starting with her brother Amir, who is praying and will be getting married very soon. We also see her father, Yusuf, and her mother, Muniba. The series showcases a very traditional Muslim family dynamic, with a very large portion of the cast and crew being Muslim to ensure the series was as true to life and respectful of the culture as possible. For instance, when Kamala responds to her mother before heading downstairs, she calls her Ami, which literally translates to mother. While the series is still very much a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you also get a glimpse into Kamala's day-to-day life, which includes her family's culture. Kamala is about to have a driving test to get her license. She's planning on going to AvengerCon over the weekend, but she doesn't want to have to ask her parents because she knows they'll say no, as most South Asian parents are very protective of their children. As the test begins, Kamala says to herself, Bismillah, which is a common Arabic phrase that is very loosely translated to mean in the name of Allah. Kamala is basically praying, which her brother told her to do before she left for the test. Even though she prayed, the test doesn't go well as Kamala backs her car into the instructor's car. As her mother lightly scolds her on the ride home, Kamala drifts away, imagining Captain Marvel flying outside the car. When Kamala gets to school, the gym teacher calls her Camellia as a subtle nod to Americans mispronouncing or not bothering to properly pronounce names of people of color. This whole hallway scene is to showcase that Kamala just kinda lets things slide, never really stands up for herself, and is somewhat timid and shy unless she's around her closest friends. Kamala meets up with her best friend Bruno, who happens to have a not-so-secret crush on her. Bruno had a bet with Kamala's mother about whether or not she would pass her driving test. Since she failed, Bruno's now out $10. Bruno and Kamala talk about AvengerCon and the fact that Kamala is working on a Captain Marvel cosplay with a little help from Bruno. There's a cosplay competition happening at AvengerCon for each of the main Avengers. Kamala is hoping to win the Captain Marvel competition, but first she needs to figure out how she's getting to AvengerCon after failing her driving test. Kamala and Bruno meet up with her other best friend, Nakia. In the comics, Nakia is a social activist, and we get a little bit of that in the show as well. Super Smash Bros. Is also mentioned here, confirming that Kamala and her friends are gamers and likely own a Nintendo Switch. They also bump into Zoe, who used to be one of Kamala's good friends, but has since grown in popularity and doesn't really associate much with Kamala anymore. She also has a popular Instagram page with 100,000 followers. In the comics, Zoe is a lesbian who likes Nakia, but after the first episode, there isn't any sign of that just yet. Kamala is called into Mr. Wilson's office, the school guidance counselor. Since Kamala doodles and drifts off into her imagination a lot during school, Mr. Wilson is trying to get her to be more focused on college admission and standardized tests. After school, Kamala and Bruno go to the Circle Q, which is basically the in-universe version of a Circle K convenience store. Bruno's family owns the store, and inside he's making small adjustments to Kamala's Captain Marvel cosplay as he tells her to ask her parents for a ride to AvengerCon. Kamala is trying to figure out the final flourish to top off her cosplay, but is having difficulty deciding what to add to it. Bruno and Kamala go through a lot of different versions of Captain Marvel mixed with other Marvel characters and zombies, some of which are Easter eggs from various comics. Bruno is basically a tech genius in the comics and eventually moves to Wakanda. In the series, he makes little gadgets for Kamala and her family, hinting at his genius-level intellect, and he has aspirations of going to Caltech. Bruno makes a device similar to a Google Home that he calls a Zuzu, and even programs it to understand Urdu, which is the official language of Pakistan. When Kamala gets home, she finds a package that her grandmother sent. Inside the box, there's an armband that catches her attention, but her mother calls it junk, drops it back into the box, and tells Kamala's brother to move it into the attic. Later that night, Kamala asks her parents if she can go to AvengerCon, but they say no, as expected, so she convinces her brother to ask her parents for her. Amir has a bit more sway with her parents and agrees to do what he can to convince them to let her go. He also mentions Kamala being afraid of the jinn, which is an Islamic spirit that's basically a genie. Jinns are mentioned multiple times throughout the episode, which seems to be a bit of foreshadowing. The next morning, Kamala's parents agree to let her go to AvengerCon. Unfortunately, it's only under the condition that her father drives her and goes inside with her. Because her mother thinks any costume Kamala makes will be skin tight and overly revealing, she also made Kamala a little Hulk costume, which you could maybe possibly sort of take as a very slight nod maybe to Hulkling. Okay, Hulkling isn't a Hulk, and that's a bit of a stretch, but you know, he's green and a teenager, so anyway. Kamala's father will go as Big Hulk, with both costumes having a bit of South Asian flair, being made from sawa kameez, which is traditional South Asian garb. They actually look pretty good, but of course Kamala has her sights set on going as Captain Marvel and not having to tag along with her father the whole time. She ends up lashing out a bit in disappointment, which upsets her parents, who were trying very hard to be accommodating, and thus she is no longer able to go. Again. Kamala meets up with Bruno, and they have a subtle romantic connection. There's a hint of them almost kissing, but Bruno loses confidence and quickly changes the subject. He made her gloves that light up as an extra flourish for her Captain Marvel cosplay to simulate the visual effect of her powers. A little Easter egg here is the Edison electric sign behind them. The lightning bolts are very similar to the bolt on Miss Marvel's costume. In addition, in the comics, Bruno's brother Vic has ties to a villain called the Inventor, who is a kind of strange clone of Thomas Edison. Bruno eventually has to be saved from the Inventor by Miss Marvel. The Inventor has a bit of an odd story, so we probably won't see him in the series beyond this little Easter egg. The next day, Kamala's father jokingly mentions that Bruno's Zuzu device is possessed by an evil djinn because it's not working correctly. Yet another mention of the djinn. Kamala and Bruno come up with an elaborate plan to make their way to AvengerCon. During the planning, it's mentioned that AvengerCon takes place at Camp Lehigh, which has a bit of history in the MCU. It's a former US Army military base located in New Jersey, where Steve Rogers was selected to become part of the Super Soldier program during Captain America: First Avenger. It was seen again in The Winter Soldier when Black Widow and Cap find what's left of Armin Zola. It was also featured in Endgame when Tony and Cap travel back in time to get the Pym particles and Tesseract. Now it's being used as an event space and is where AvengerCon is being held. Bruno suggests that Kamala use something Pakistani to add the final flair to her Captain Marvel cosplay. This gives her the idea to use the armband her grandmother sent. As she examines it, there's an electrical response hinting that it may not be just a normal armband. The next day, Kamala and Bruno put their plan into action, but they're running way behind schedule and Kamala loses her bike. When they finally get to AvengerCon, there are tons of references to almost every hero that has appeared in the MCU, from Gamora cosplay to sections dedicated to the fallen heroes, Iron Man and Black Widow, and a giant Ant-Man and Mjolnir. Kamala sees her former friend Zoe in a similar, but more skin-tight Captain Marvel cosplay, a callback to her mother's previous concerns. Kamala changes into her own Captain Marvel cosplay, which is not skin-tight and far less revealing, while Bruno changes into his Bruce Banner cosplay. When Kamala puts on the armband, it expands and locks onto her wrist, effectively unlocking her latent powers. This is a little nod to how Kamala gets her powers in the comics, which is via the Terrigen Mist, which unlocks latent power in humans that have the Inhuman gene. While there's no sign that Kamala is an Inhuman in the MCU just yet, she still had latent powers that were unlocked by this mystic armband, which implies that she may not be a normal human. With rumors that a variant of Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans, may return following his appearance in Multiverse of Madness, it's not entirely out of the question that Ms. Marvel is still an Inhuman, but we'll have to see how the rest of the series and the Marvels plays out. As Kamala's latent powers are unlocked, she hears a voice that is likely her great-grandmother, Aisha, who originally used the armbands many years ago. Kamala also sees what looks like an alternate realm filled with beings that may or may not be jinns. In the comics, jinns are magical, immortal beings who are very similar to traditional genies. They also have ties to Lilith, wife of Satan, who is directly connected to the Midnight Suns. You have to jump through some hoops, but with Moon Knight, Blade, Werewolf by Night, and others entering the MCU, it's not completely out of the question for the Jinn to be introduced in Ms. Marvel, only to later be connected to Lilith, who the Midnight Suns may eventually fight. Like I said, you have to jump through some hoops. Anyway, as we snap back to reality, so does Kamala as she heads up on stage to show off her costume and participate in the cosplay competition. She's a bit spooked by all the lights and cameras and accidentally activates her powers with no idea how to use them. The crowd eats it up, thinking it's all part of the show, with one person even recording everything on their phone, but Kamala's powers knock down the huge Ant-Man head, and that leads to chaos at the event. Zoe ends up being in trouble due to all the chaos, and Kamala is able to use her newfound powers to save her. While her powers in the series are a bit different than they are in the comics, when she saves Zoe, we see her comic powers, only with a cosmic twist, as she creates an enlarged hand to catch Zoe before she hits the ground. In the comics, her main power is the ability to change her size and extend her limbs. You can think of it kind of like a cross between Ant-Man and Mr. Fantastic. There's more to it than that, but that's the simple explanation. In the series, her powers are enhanced so that she can hang with the more powerful characters in the MCU instead of being relegated to a street-level hero like she starts out as in the comics. As the episode ends, Kamala gets home from AvengerCon much later than she originally planned, and her mother is waiting for her. She's scolded by her mother, then Kamala revels in her new cosmic powers as the credits roll. In the post-credit scene, we see someone watching a clip of Kamala's powers from the cell phone video that was taken in the crowd at AvengerCon. This is a US Department of Damage Control office, or just Damage Control, or DODC for short. We've actually seen the DODC before in Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man No Way Home. Agent Sadie Deaver is looking at her phone and speaking with Agent Cleary, who was last seen in Spider-Man No Way Home interrogating Peter Parker. They discuss how they've never seen powers like Kamala's before, and Cleary agrees that they need to bring her in. While Damage Control started as a part of S.H.I.E.L.D. that handled post-battle cleanup, they transitioned into dealing with dangerous and powerful alien technology, and more recently into a federal agency that detains enhanced individuals, thus their interest in Kamala, and very likely the armband that unlocked her abilities. There are more than a few set photos and online rumors that point toward Agent Deaver actually working for an organization known as N.I.C.E. N-I-C-E. However, we don't yet know anything more about N.I.C.E. or even if it actually exists in the final version of Ms. Marvel. We don't know whether it's part of Damage Control or something entirely new, so we'll have to see how the series progresses, but for now, Damage Control has an interest in Kamala Khan and her powers, which is not a good thing. That wraps up our coverage of Ms. Marvel Episode 1. Check back with us next week when we cover Episode 2. If you have any questions on the episode or the series as a whole, leave a comment below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves Ms. Marvel.